in 1707, I got this picture of this old man busting a move during that.
It's a good kind of roll.
It is a good kind of roll. And I just want to compliment, where's Ariel? Where's Ariel? Ariel, you knocked the candle off, dude. The bass did it again. That's awesome. The bass knocked another candle off, so it's going to be a good Sunday. No, that's 2 services, 2 morning as well. Yeah, I don't know if that's your style of music or not. You know, if it's not, you need to repent. That's just simply. But if it's not, just think when that hymn was written. I've never heard that hymn before, and I'm sure it was very hymnish, you know, kind of. But I'm sure when they heard it, maybe even in this room, in 1895 when this room was built, and there was a bunch of stoic Swedes, and they were rocking out to the organ, and they were praising God to that thing. I mean, it was. So I just love. Especially with Sojourn, and I don't know who their worship guys. I know Daniel, the pastor down there, great guy, Daniel Montgomery. But I love what they're doing with Isaac Watts stuff. Most of their stuff they're doing Isaac Watts. It's great. What am I talking about? Oh yeah. Hey, just kind of a public service announcement here. Tim kind of mentioned it was last week. If you weren't here, Easter, we have kind of a reverse holiday church. So I know a lot of you aren't here. You go other places for Easter. You go to good churches. But I'd said that I came out on Easter Sunday. This is a true story. It's actually true. My truck was gone, and somebody had stolen my truck. And it's kind of been a cool way to be talking with my neighbors, because I've been saying, yeah, it happened on Easter Sunday, and it's kind of like the body of the Lord Jesus. Now I know I put it here. Where is it? Where is it? You know. And I've been there 21 years. They're used to me, so they kind of, you know. But it came back. I got it, and they had found the key that I'd left inside, which I know. Don't do that, right? But if you do that, they find it, then they don't break the column. So I got that going for me, so I got it back. So thanks for praying or whatever. So I've gotten 2 or 3. I can't even remember how many times I've had vehicles stolen, but all of them have been over 150,000 miles. So this looks nice, but it's 150,000 miles on this old beater. And they joyrided it for about a week, and I got it back. So that's a great thing. This last weekend, yesterday, a bunch of us guys were at this thing we call Fight Club. It's put on by Hope and Antioch in Acts 29. And it's a one-day event. Maybe some of you guys went last year, some of you went this year. It's a great event, really is. And this year was on Men on Mission, a lot of fun. I'm wasted. I've got no voice left. I had a chance to be one of the communicators, warm-up band for Eric Mason. Eric Mason came. Eric Mason's a pastor in Philadelphia. And lights out, eh? The guys who went, lights out, eh? Huh? Yeah, man, he just, it was booming, as he would say. And it was great, because he had all these inner cities, an African-American guy, and he had all these inner city African-Americanisms, and then he'd stop and explain it. It was booming. That means good. And then he'd keep going. It was great, because it's like, yeah, I was looking at the thesaurus, booming. Yeah, oh, good. So, but it was awesome. It was just great. And he had some, I want to give credit where credit's due. I'm going to totally rip off one of his analogies from yesterday. So if you were there, this might be a little bit of a you might see this coming. But before we get into that, I want to remind you that at this service, this is the opportunity. Oh, wow. This is the opportunity that you have to ask questions. It just hit me what we're talking about this week, and that we have open questions. And just remember, be kind. I'm fragile. So this will be fun, though. This will be really fun. We're going to talk. So you just ask questions. I have a point. We'll all stop. If it makes you really nervous to ask a question, just ask the person next to you to ask that question. That's fine, or whatever. Or just, I don't know what, just stand up and shout and yell it out or whatever. It's all fine. But think of things that you'd want to ask, and we'll kind of deal with them as a community. You can ask me. All right. Now, with that said, we're not going this place, but I want to go there for just a minute so that I can bring up a point. And oftentimes people, and I know a lot of people at Hope, this is their first experience of a church, because one of the things you think is they just want my money. Okay, I don't want your money. We don't want your money. There's this perception, and in some cases it's true, the church exists to take your money so that they can get bigger, and they get bigger so they need more money, right? You just kind of get that whole thing going on. It's kind of like this, what's that about? And I don't want your money. I mean, if you want to give me your money, I'll take your money. Me. Oh, but the church as well. Yeah, that's fine. But that's not the issue. The issue more is that you get involved in the community at Hope, and you say, this is my family. I'm liking my church. I'm liking what the gospel's doing in my life and changing me, and I really care about my city, and I want to bless it, and I want to invest in what Hope does. Then great, okay? So with that said, I want to spend a little time talking about money. You're thinking, wait a minute, man, I came for Song of Solomon. I came for sex. We're not talking about money. Yes, we are, just for a minute. Just for a minute. This will connect, I promise you. I was told by one of my professors in seminary, you can chase a rabbit as long as you catch it. So I'm going to catch it. Here's the rabbit, though. I want to talk about money just for a second here. In 1 Timothy 6, you got an insert there. You can follow along on all this if you want, where I'm headed. These passages are in there. You can look at this just briefly. But I want to talk about money, and I want to read it in context. I really would just want to get to verse, I think it's 17 or 18, but I want to read it in context because this is my favorite passage in the entire Bible on money and possessions, period. This is it. This is it. 1 Timothy chapter 6, Paul is teaching his young mentee about money and about possessions and about people who have a lot of them. How he, as a leader in this church that he's in Ephesus, how Timothy should be working with these people who are wealthy. And here's what he's going to say. He's going to say, but godliness with contentment is great gain, for we brought nothing into the world, and we can take nothing out of it, but we have food and clothing. But if we have food and clothing, and I would argue shelter in Minnesota, we will be content with that. People who want to get rich fall into temptation and a trap and into many foolish and harmful desires that plunge men into ruin and destruction. For the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. Some people eager for money have wandered from the faith and pierced themselves with many griefs. Now, if you just stop right there, you'd say, oh, okay, money's kind of the problem. You know, trying to be rich or having money is an issue. But that's not where he stops. He talks about the problem of money. We'll come back to that in just a second. But he says there's actually something more here. So if you just, verses 11 to 16 are great, but he's getting back to the issue of money when he comes to 17, and he says this. In verse 17, he says, command those who are rich in this present world, and he doesn't say to get rid of all their stuff. He doesn't say that. He says this, not to be arrogant, nor to put their hope in wealth, which is so uncertain, but to put their hope in God, who richly provides us with everything for our enjoyment. Command them to do good, to be rich in good deeds, and to be generous and willing to share. In this way, they will lay up treasures for themselves as a firm foundation for the coming age, so that they may take hold of the life that is truly life. So what's Paul saying here to Timothy? To teach those who are rich, which, by the way, is pretty much everybody in the room, according to world standards. We're very rich, right? He's saying this. He's not saying there's nothing wrong with being rich. You have money? Go for it. What it can become, though, is a trap when you start to do what? And he says it right here. Be arrogant and put your hope in it. When money becomes that thing like, oh, I'm okay. I'm better than you because I make more money than you. Or this is ultimately my source of security. I'm fine. I have hope in it. My future is set because I have money. Now, Paul says that's not a good thing, not because it doesn't work. He says it's uncertain, right? It's uncertain. Why don't you put your hope in something that's certain? So he says to them, put your hope in God. Teach these people who are wealthy not to just get rid of all their money, but to put their hope in God, no longer in money. And then, after that happens, after you let the gospel of Jesus Christ become the center of your existence, and you say that the God of the universe, the God who's infinite, he actually sent his son and died for me so that I could trust him. And anyone who trusts him, puts their faith in him, anyone who does that is now has a right relationship with this almighty God. If that's my hope, now I can actually enjoy money. It says, look at the next passage. This is the point I wanted to get to. Who richly provides us with everything for our enjoyment. Money and stuff and relationships and all the stuff of this world, God has given. Once you've got your hope in God, now it becomes that those passions that come within you to have this stuff can be redeemed passions and can be used for enjoyment. The trick then is making sure that you keep it as enjoyment and not hope, or what I like to call worship, right? So a lot of people said, I even got an email or Facebook from somebody who said, dude, I'm just really impressed You know, you talked last Sunday about your truck being stolen, and I've talked to you this week about it, and you just don't really seem really upset about it. And the reason for that is I really don't care. I mean, it's a 155,000-mile truck that I didn't pay a ton, to get, and it doesn't have a whole lot. So I appreciate that. That's nice of you to say. But let's move it towards something, I'm just going to be a little vulnerable here. If you'd stolen my motorcycle, okay? Right? I mean, if you'd taken my motorcycle, which is kind of a one-of-a-kind, so it's like hard to replace, that had been a lot harder. And I remember riding home last week from this service, and somebody had mentioned that to me. Man, it's so cool. You're really cool with that and everything. I thought, yeah, I am cool about that, but I don't know how cool I'd be if you had taken my bike. And I remember on the way home saying to God, this is yours. This is yours. I want to, you can have this. And, I have other possessions that I like. I love my leather jacket that I wear when I ride. It's like one of my favorite possessions, right? I just love that thing. Or let me think of something else. My wife. Not in that order. She's above the leather jacket. Well, this isn't outside, boys? Shoot. But those get more difficult because those things slip. And things that you really enjoy, you have to be very diligent to say, I will not put hope in this. It's a thing. I will not put hope. I will enjoy it. But I will put hope in God. And there's this passion that comes within you, and it wants to take you places, and you have to at times be careful with it. But that of itself is not a bad thing, right? Who richly provides us with everything for what? Our enjoyment. There's kind of this movement in Christianity that talks about, dude, you like that stuff too much. It's like, no, it's impossible to like stuff too much. It's just, once it slips into worship, then it's bad. If you put God in his right place and put your hope in him, then stuff falls in the right place. Now, with that said, Paul's going to speak to another one of his mentees in Titus, and he's going to teach this. I want to, just for the sake of time, I'm going to get all the context on the screen. I'm just going to read the first couple of verses here. It says, for the grace of God that brings salvation has appeared to all men. Just in one sentence here, because he's kind of already talked about this, but it's this concept of Christ has come, and he brings what? Salvation. He frees you. Frees you from what? Your sin. Your sin, and it frees you now to have a right relationship with God. But it's more than that, okay? The gospel is more than that. We spent, I don't know how many weeks, 15 weeks talking about the gospel. The gospel is way more than that. And look at what it says here. It says, this is what the gospel that brings salvation, the grace of God, also says. It teaches us to say no to ungodliness and worldly passions and to live self-controlled, upright, and godly lives in this present age while we wait for the blessed hope, the glorious appearing of our great God and Savior, Jesus Christ. And he goes on there. But the concept here is this. There are passions, and this grace that God has given you, if you put these things in the right order now, you make God God, and you keep other things in enjoyment, it works. But when you start to flip that and let things or money or possessions or people or anything in creation become your hope and your satisfaction, it becomes a worldly passion. And what do you say to that? You say no, right? Passage says it teaches to say no and to live what? Self-controlled, upright, and godly lives. What does self-control mean? Self-control means, simplest definition, control yourself, right? That's what it means. And if you know from Galatians, it's talked about a fruit of the Spirit. It's something that God grants you, but it's really ironic here, right? God gives you this, it's a fruit of the Spirit, and yet self-control means control yourself. So you do it too. So it's both things here. God's giving it to you, and you're doing it. Now, here's the analogy I stole from Mason. All that's just kind of a setup. Here's the analogy. Think of your passions like a dog. A big dog, all right? Here's a picture of a bull mastiff, all right? That is I don't know about you, but that's my passions, all right? And I want the people of Hope to be big passion people. You should be big passion people. If you're stuffing your passions, you're not getting it. You're not getting enjoyment. You've been taught that that's wrong. It's not. But it's a big old dog, right? It's a big dog. Big dog. And look at that size of that thing. How did a head get through that window? I mean, it's massive, right? Just think about taking this thing on a walk. Look at this lady here. She's out sitting in the park with this thing. And I mean, my gosh, this thing is huge. What are you going to do when you take a bull mastiff out for a walk? Well, some people go, and I tried to find a wimpiest leash. This is the best I could do. It's this little picture here. It's a small dog leash, you know. You take that bull mastiff of your passions out for a walk, and you have a little leash. It just snap, right? That dog's going to see a squirrel, and boom, out it goes, right? There it goes. So what do you do? What do? You don't have a leash like that. You got a leash like this. You got yourself, use Mason's language, Home Depot. You know, you go get a big old chain. And here's what happens. You got your passion. You got your dog passion. He's right here. You say, okay, I'll call him Belvedere. Belvedere, Belvedere. We're going out for a walk. But, click, you leash that passion, right? And you say, sit, stay. No, sit, stay. I'm going to open the door here. You stay there. Right? You open that door and that dog starts to go, right? That's what happens to your passions. And that dog just wants to smell. If you've ever had a dog, you know what I'm talking about. The kind of just, you know, it just goes everywhere. And you got that thing on a leash. And you keep it on a leash for a reason. Why? Because those passions are going everywhere. And in this situation, it'd be dangerous for the dog if you didn't have it on a leash. A lot of us got an impression that it's no big deal. Our passions are not a big deal. And we can just control them. Here's a picture of me walking a dog I used to have. You know, there's a couple years ago. I know. That's not really my dog. I know what you're thinking. Some of you are laughing. Some of you are going, he's got way too much time on his hands. How can he find this stuff? I do. But that's the idea. We think of, oh, no big deal. I'll just walk my passion. No big deal. And just kind of walk around. We think we can handle it. The reality is, for your passions, you got to be prepared, self-controlled. You got to self-control these passions. They're as big as a bull mastiff. And what do? You got to get like a big old pinch collar. You ever heard of, those of you who had dogs, you know what a pinch collar does? It's amazing what you can do with a pinch collar. Changes the dog instantly. Or you got to get, maybe for some of you, your passions and such, you got to get a muzzle. Shut up. Shut up. I don't want you talking when we're out there. I don't want you barking. I don't want you biting. I don't want you licking. I don't nothing. We got this, okay? Some of you need this on your passions. It's okay. No walking the passion without that. All right? You take your dog for a walk, you got to be careful. From 2000 to 2004, we had a dog. We had a golden retriever. And it's a picture of him. His name was Ripley. In this picture, he's eating the end of my arm off. It's this great picture. This did not lead to his demise in 2004, honestly. I was able to find the arm and put it back on. That's just hilarious. But anyway, Ripley, we got him from a camp up, people who are a breeder, they were at this camp up in by Brainerd. And he was the dud. There was a whole bunch of golden retrievers, and this one was the dud. In fact, they were with some Alaskan Malamutes. The Alaskan Malamutes are twice the size, and they would just kind of step on his head and, you know, and just treat. Wow. And they were just, you know, and she's kind of a runt. And so we took him out of the pen that he was with these other dogs. We placed him out, and he just kind of sat down. We thought, oh, man, I don't know. I remember my wife, who really is not a dog person. Her first memory in life is being bit of a dog. But she had made the decision, we're getting this dog. And she thought, well, he's kind of mellow on the whole thing. So we took him home, and it was time to let the dog have a bathroom break. They don't have bathrooms for dogs. But, you know, step out. And we stopped at Camp Ripley. You know where that is? 371, Highway 10, up there on the way to Brainerd. Highway 10, I can't remember which one it is, 371. But Fort Ripley, Camp Ripley, can't remember what it's called. But we put him out there, and there's this big grassy area right by the tank. If you remember where that is, you have to take an exit now, but back then you didn't have to. And we let him run, this little puppy. And again, this is 2000. So this is 11 years ago. So my oldest son at this time is 7. Calvin is 4. And John is, I can't do the math, 31. And so he'd be 18, he'd be 7. That's not right. He'd be 9, 7, and 4. So anyway, they're little guys, right? 3 little boys and a puppy. And that dog chased them around and knocked them down. It was one of my best dad moments ever. So we even named the dog Ripley because of that moment, because he was there at the camp. This dog, from that moment until the day of his death, never slowed down. He was bonsai. I remember my son, 4-year-old Calvin, coming to me and goes, Dad, Ripley's in a lot of trouble, isn't he, Dad? We wouldn't have got Ripley if we'd have knew he'd be in this much trouble, wouldn't he? Because he just destroyed everything. We live in South Minneapolis. You seen the size of a regular postage stamp? That's the size of my backyard. Maybe 2 of them. I don't want to exaggerate. But it's just tiny. And this dog, they're not made for the city, man. They're not made for the city. And this dog was full of energy, and he would lay around all day long and be bummed until the moment that the boys would come home from school. And then he'd wail on them, just wail on them for like an hour. And they're like, Ripley, stop. He's like, no, you don't understand. I've been storing this up. Let's go. And one of the joys of my life was taking Ripley, go to the next one here, taking this dog and taking him out to my uncle's farm up by Crookston and letting that dog for 4 days get off the leash and to run anywhere he wants. If you've ever seen a golden retriever or a Labrador out in the woods, it'll almost bring tears to your eyes how much set free they are. This dog ran himself wild for 4 days. He wanted to chase something, he chased it, one of which was a skunk. There's another story involved. It was a total mess. Skunk got him like 2 or 3 times. It's like, not too bright upstairs there, kid. But and this dog was set free. That's what I want to talk about today. We're in the book of Song of Solomon. Today's the wedding night. And we're talking about taking the dog off the leash, baby. Giddy up. Last time we were together and we talked about the book of Song of Solomon, we talked about a tale of 2 processions. Okay? And there's a picture of my wife and some guy. And one in this. And I talked about 2 processionals. One was Song of Solomon. We talked about the royal wedding, and now we have that. Huh? How many people watched the royal wedding? How many people saw the royal wedding? All right, come on, raise your hand. You're kind of like, I did. How many guys? Raise your hand up, guys. How many guys? What do I see? I see 2. And me. I did too. You put your hand down. Come on, put it up. Yeah, come on, there you go. Women in the room. The only guys worth anything are the guys that have their hands up right now. Funniest moment ever. There's a guy sitting here, second service, and he says loud, he goes, I changed my vote then. And he raises his hand. Oh my gosh, just bust. It was so funny. But yeah, it's a beautiful thing, right? Beautiful thing. I like that. It's historic. So talk about that. Song of Solomon. And that's what's been going on in the book of Song of Solomon, has been this relationship that's gone all the way from just they're interested in each other to having a DTR to getting courting to this kind of creepy thing where he goes and looks through the lattice and all that, to him asking her to marry him, to her responding and saying yes. All of that has taken place, and then it leads to this processional. And we're not sure which way it goes, whether he's going out to get her and to bring her back to Jerusalem, or whether this has gone to her house and now it's coming to Jerusalem. That's the way I take it. But either way, it's this beautiful processional that we saw last time we talked about. We talked about planning a wedding and all those kinds of things. And then we also talked, because it was Palm Sunday, we talked about the second processional, which was the processional, a royal sacrifice. It was Jesus coming into to Jerusalem for ultimately would be his death. And then we tied those 2 together. Now, with that said, what I want to talk about tonight is the wedding night. And I want to talk about biblical, passionate lovemaking. I just want to go right after it. So if you got your Bible with you, and here we go. Like I said, questions tonight too. So, all right, here we go. Song of Solomon chapter 4 is where we're going to be. We're going to read all the chapter. We're going to take a look at it. And then we're also going to do the first verse of chapter 5, which I actually think should be in chapter 4, but it's not. But we're going to include it. So here we go. Let me just read it through. I'll blush, and then we'll try to make some sense out of this. How beautiful you are, my darling. This is Song of Solomon chapter 4. Oh, how beautiful. Your eyes behind your veil are doves. Your hair is like a flock of goats descending from Mount Gilead. Your teeth are like a flock of sheep just shorn. coming up from the washing. Each has its twin. Not one of them is alone. Your lips are like a scarlet ribbon. Your mouth is lovely. Your temples behind your veil are like the halves of a pomegranate. Your neck is like the Tower of David, built with elegance. On it hang 1,000 shields, all of them shields of warriors. Your two breasts are like two fawns, like twin fawns of a gazelle that browse among the lilies until the day breaks and the shadows flee. I will go to the mountain of myrrh and to the hill of incense. All beautiful you are, my darling. There is no flaw in you. Come with me from Lebanon, my bride. Come with me from Lebanon. Descend from the crest of Amana, from the top of Senir, the summit of Hermon, from the lion's dens and the mountains haunts of the leopards. You've stolen my heart, my sister, my bride. You've stolen my heart with one glance of your eyes, with one jewel of your necklace. How delightful is your love, my sister, my bride. How much more pleasing is your love than wine, and the fragrance of your perfume than any spice. Your lips drop sweetness at the honeycomb, Your lips drop sweetness as the honeycomb, my bride. Milk and honey are under your tongue. The fragrance of your garments is like that of Lebanon. You are a garden locked up, my sister, my bride. You are a spring enclosed, a sealed fountain. Your plants are an orchard of pomegranates, with choice fruits, with henna and nard and saffron, calamus and cinnamon, and every kind of incense tree, with myrrh and aloes and all the finest spices. You are a garden fountain, a well of flowing water streaming down from Lebanon. Awake, north wind, and come, south wind. Blow on my garden, that its fragrance may spread abroad. Let my lover come into his garden and taste its choice fruits. I've come into my garden, my sister, my bride. I have gathered my myrrh and my spice. I have eaten my honeycomb and my honey. I have drunk my wine and my milk. Eat, O friends, and drink. Drink your fill, O lovers. Now, a lot of you are thinking, that's it? I thought this would get a little more steamy. By the time we're done unpacking this, believe me, woo, we're going to have to card you because this was NC-17 tonight. So this is steamy, all right? This is, yeah. And remember, I don't write this stuff. I'm just reading it, okay? Now, another thing, sex is just sometimes just awkward. You know, I'm just saying it's awkward with a couple, and sometimes you just kind of laugh. We're going to laugh a lot tonight, okay? So if you're new to Hope, we're not trying to laugh at sex. We're not trying to laugh at people. We're certainly not trying to laugh at God. But just know that this just gives you the giggles a little bit, you know? And we're just going to have a lot of fun with this. So this is really going to be one of those deals, just to let you know. What we're talking about tonight is biblical wedding night, passionate lovemaking. Now, before we get there isn't anything talked about in the book of Song of Solomon about the wedding itself, the actual ceremony, okay? So, but let's just talk about that for a second. Some of you, and that's not unrealistic, when most people talk about their wedding, they talk sometimes about the ceremony, but it's a full day of celebration with this happiness before and excitement afterwards, and then there's a ceremony. That's an important thing. But what is that ceremony? What is that about? If you saw the royal wedding, which you and I were one of the few that did, but if you saw that, and Andy, that it's kind of somber. That one sure was. Holy smokes, it was dry, right? Really, very stoic, very no real emotion, hardly at all shown. And that's okay. It doesn't necessarily have to be that way, but it is a serious moment. What's going on in the ceremony? And I say there's three things. There's three things. So when are you married? When am I married? Here's when you're married. You're married when you make a covenant. See, being married is not just about, we're committed to each other. We've kind of, we've rubbed noses and put spit on the end, and we're Eskimo married now. It's like, well, is that how they do it? I don't know. I have no idea. Does anybody know? That's how they do it. But there's three things. Okay, first is you're making a covenant. You're making a covenant before God, before human witnesses, and before the authorities. The state, in this case, the state of Minnesota, in our state, requires a marriage license. There's actually a waiting period now in the state. You can't I think it's to kill all these kind of heavily influenced by, the Jack Daniels or whatever weddings. And so there's a waiting period. You have to sober up or something before. And so I don't know what the waiting period is, like 24, 48 hours or something. You can't get it right away. So, but with that said, that's when you're married, is when you make that covenant before God, human witnesses, and before the state, and obviously to each other. There's some type of vows. If I'm doing your wedding, all I require is vows in the presence of other people and God that you're both there, and a wedding license. It could be a really short wedding, really quick. That's all I require. Now, nobody's ever taken me up on this. One was very close, and I think I'm doing one for my niece, this niece-in-law this summer, where that's basically what they want. It's pretty quick. But that's all it is, right? That's the big deal. That's when you're married, not before. You might feel committed. You're not married. So that's what marriage is. And that's what takes place here. It's not mentioned here. It happens in the white space between the end of chapter 3 and then in the beginning of chapter 4. What also isn't talked about at all is the big after party. All right, there's always a big party. It's the biggest party you're going to throw, and yada-da, clinky clink glasses, and King Solomon dips her, and woohoo, and you got to sing your favorite love song to get her to kiss now, and whatever. All this is happening in the royal palace with King Solomon and this woman. It's a great deal. It's not talked about, but it's an important thing. It's fun. This is what's talked about. We're in the now King Solomon's chambers after all of that. And she says, what do you want to do now? And he says, I was thinking about taking the dog for a walk. Actually, I was thinking about taking the dog off the leash. And that's what I want to talk about. The 7 dogs, pardon the change of metaphor here, but the 7 dogs that are unleashed here. A tale of 7 passions set free. Whew, I'm getting all steamy up here already. Okay, here we go. And really, for those of you who are linear, I'm going to go through the passage linearly. I could not outline this to figure it out for anything. I'm just going to kind of make 7 observations along the way. And for those of you who aren't linear, you're going to love this because it's all over the map. But there's kind of a path he follows, it seems to me, in this whole thing. And here's what happens. Now, passion number 1. Here we go. Passion number 1. Enjoying one another without touching. He's going to spend the first 7 verses no touching. They are apart from each other, and he's making observations of her. Okay? Now, these observations are poetic. In fact, if you were to put together what this woman would look like, we've seen this before, this is what she would look like. That's the perfect woman according to Song of Solomon. If you took this thing literally, like this is where dudes, it's poetry, okay? You got to be careful with poetry, especially with Winnie the Pooh there trying to take the honey and stick it under her tongue. You know, all this weird stuff, goat hair, and it's just strange, you know. And you see the couple little deer down here over there. We'll get to them later. Let me tell you about that. But it's just, you know, it's poetry. You got to be real careful with poetry. Because sometimes it doesn't land and sometimes it does. And you'll see some of this will work for us and some of it won't. And what he's going to do in this is he's taking a look at her, and he's going to start from the top, and he's going to keep going down. That's how he's going to look at her. All right? So let's take a look at what he says. Enjoying one another without touching. Passion 1. Dog number 1 released. I'm just going to enjoy this. Number 1, how beautiful you are, my darling. Oh, how beautiful. Starts with her eyes. Your eyes are like, are behind your veil, they're doves. In other words, they're like white. You know, something that's a white against something dark. I see them. I can look into your soul when I see your eyes. I love to look at your eyes. And then he goes down and he says, your hair. Now, obviously, her hair would be all over the place, so it'd be down. It wouldn't just be that she's bald and has facial hair, but it's, that was a shudder of a thought, actually. But, and he says this. This is poetry now. You got to be careful. He says, your hair is like a flock of goats descending from Mount Gilead. And you're like, what? I don't know if that works, all right? Here's how it works. You got to think of it like this. Think of like a rolling hill, okay? You got this rolling hill. And you've got a couple thousand goats, and they're coming down this hill. And as they're coming down, it's kind of going like this, you know? And you see that. Now, as soon as I read this early in preparation this week, there's an image that came to my mind, And I'm already going to apologize in advance for this, okay? I'm sorry to put this in your memory because it's been burning in mine since I thought of it, but I got to get rid of it. The image that's in my mind is the slow motion image of Fabio. And all the hair going back. We were coming back from the overseer team retreat on Tuesday night, and Seth was pumping gas, and the wind was just perfect, and his hair was... He was totally doing the Fabio thing. You were totally doing the Fabio thing. I'm like, oh my gosh. It is, I should have said, man, it's a flock of goats coming down from Mount Gilead. Let's keep moving. He says, he's moving down. He says, your teeth are like a flock of sheep just shorn, coming up from the washing. So, sheep, the wool of a sheep would get kind of dirty, but then when they'd get shorn, it would be just white, and they'd just been clean. So he's looking at it, basically says, you have really white teeth. I really like them. And the best part is the next part. You got all of them. You got all your teeth. It's like he's surprised. Each has its twin. It's great. Not one of them is alone. He's shocked by it, It's so great. Now, this is not that recent, just till about 100 years ago or so, we didn't have good dental care. It was a rarity that someone would have all their own teeth, and that they'd be white and the whole thing. And so, remember, even, it's not that long ago, maybe 150 years ago, you were a barber, and then you took a weekend class on being a dentist. I mean, the guy was a barber and a dentist, right? Yeah, you're in the chair already. Lean back, out goes the tooth. And in this case, he's looking at her and he's admiring her because her teeth are they're all there, and they're white. Now, stop and think about this. How can he tell? How can he tell? Anybody? Because she's smiling. Or, if you're smiling, you can't see all of them. She's probably laughing at his hokey illustration about the hair. She's going, ha, 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 ha. And then he can see, oh, you have all of your teeth. Look at that. I didn't see way back there before. The Fabio thing got you. And now I can see that you've got all of them. He's going to move to her lips. He says, against your white teeth, your lips are like a scarlet ribbon. Your mouth is lovely. Your temples or your cheekbones behind your veil, they're like halves of a pomegranate. They're red and rosy. I like that. And then he says, your neck is like the Tower of David, built with elegance, and on it hang 1,000 shields, and all the shields of warriors. And people have it's all over the map. Commentaries say, what in the world is this all about? I have no idea. Here's what I do know. He's saying, you have a neck. And your neck looks like a neck. And it's like a tower. And it's a big tower that was long and built on a brick. I don't know how this is where you got to be careful with the poetry, right? I don't know how exactly it works. Now, pay attention so far. What is he saying about her? He's saying, you have eyes, you have hair, I like your lips, I like your teeth, I like that they're all there, and you have a neck. It's not, most people, unless you're born have had an accident or, born with a birth defect, you have that. He's just noticing it, and he's going right down, and he's enjoying it. And now he's going to go a little lower, and here's what he's going to say. Your two breasts are like two fawns, the twin fawns of a gazelle that browses among the lilies. Now, if you were to give me about 1,000 years to come up with metaphors for breasts, I don't think fawns. I'm just saying, there's probably 300,000 things I could think of before we get to fawns. But this is what I think why he does it. Think of it this way. It's a fawn now. It's a little deer, right? Little deer. And you have the little deer. It's working over here. I'll talk over here. You got the little deer. And it's cute, right? Now, let's just say you have the little deer, and you have the little piggies, and you have the little chickens, and you have, what else? Give me another animal. I can't think of another little. Did somebody just say ostrich? You say ostrich? That's not working. Give me another one. Piggies and little calves. Okay, there's, I suppose, whatever. Okay, and if you go to the state fair, or if you go to the Minnesota Zoo, they have a special place for kids, right? And it has all these little baby animals. And what do they call this area? Say it loud. You guys said it, not me. All right? I'm just saying. You call it a petting zoo. Why? Oh, look at the little fawn. I just want to hold the fawn. Another one. I want to hold that one too. I'm not, hey. I'm just reading this stuff. This is what he's saying. Look at the little fawns. I just want to hold the fawns. I just know that. God. And he's looking at his watch when she says, what should we do tonight? He says, I think the zoo's open. I think the hours of operation are under. And look at what he says, how long the hours of operation are. Until the day breaks and the shadows flee, I will go to the mountain of myrrh and to the hill of incense. He's kind of named them, okay? That's a third service. I didn't say that the other services. You guys got that one. The resistance, first and second service. But you guys come out in the evening, you get the R-rated version. He names them. And if you think, wait a minute, where are you getting that from? Dude, this is what's going on. Remember when he goes through in chapter 1 and when she says, do you kind of like me? And he says, well, you're like a mare around me. Yeah, he says, you're like a mare. This is verse 13. My lover is to me a sachet. Oh, no, excuse me. I got the wrong one here. She's responding to when he says, you're like a mare among the stallions of Pharaoh. You distract me. She says this in verse 13. My lover is to me, and I'm going to describe how you are to me. My lover is to me a sachet of myrrh resting between my breasts. Okay? He's picking up on that. Okay, he's picking up on that. And then remember when he invites her, he says, hey, marry me. Come with me. Her answer is pretty traditional in the beginning. My lover is mine and I am his. He browses among the lilies and he chooses me. But then she says, until the day breaks and the shadows flee, that's the same thing he picks up on. Turn, my lover, and be like a gazelle or like a young stag on us. The way she says yes to his wedding proposal is, I want you to climb all over Mount Myrrh and Mount Incest. Just reading this, okay? That's what he's saying. And he says, that sounds fun. Last part of Passion 1 is this. He puts all this together now and he says, how beautiful you are. I like the way that's worded too. How beautiful. It's like the wrong way. It doesn't say you are beautiful. It says, how beautiful you are. It's all in the wrong order here. And it's this, but it puts emphasis on you, her name. It's like beautiful. It's her name. All beautiful you are, my darling. There is no flaw in you. Is that true? Is there any flaws in her? Does anybody remember? There is flaws in her. What is it? She's dark. She's very self-conscious about the fact that she's got very dark skin. Remember from chapter 1, when she starts talking about these things, she says, dark am I yet lovely. One of the verses, if you wrestle it all with self-image, you need to memorize. I have blemishes, yet I'm lovely. Whatever they are, I'm lovely. Why? Because God's made me that way. Do not stare at me, verse 6. Because I'm darkened by the sun. My brothers were angry with me and made me work. I'm a laborer. Her hands were going to be really tough. This was not going to be a person of royalty. She was a peasant. She had to work hard. She probably had muscles all over the place. She was very muscular, which in that culture, and even in ours to some degree, is not necessarily attractive. And yet he looks at her. And doggone it, what does he say about her? How beautiful you are. Why? Because he's made a decision that you are my standard of beauty. And your pimples and your little bit of extra weight here and the little bit of circle under your eye and your dark skin and a couple of those blemishes and whatever else are exactly the way I want them. Whew. Let me tell you, that is the way to have biblical lovemaking. That is the way to have biblical lovemaking, gentlemen. It's taking that time to let yourself go and to, as it says here, I lost my, the enjoying one another without touching. It's ways of just constantly saying, you're beautiful. I admire you. I'm attracted to you. Carol's nickname is Gorgeous or Babe. She knows that I think that way. I call her the delight of my eyes. That's what I call her. Does that mean she's perfect? She doesn't have blemishes? She has blemishes. But I'm saying, you're my standard. And I'm going to work hard at that to make that way. Number one, you want to be a biblical lover? Why? No, I want to get it on. I want to get the sex. This is sex. This is the dog that God has made within you that should be running free. And when you experience that, you will have maximum sex the way God wants it to have. Passion number two, the freedom to release your heart. Listen to what he says to her now. Up until the wedding time, there's always a little bit of reservation. There's always a little bit. And he now releases his heart. He talks about her. This is a very controversial passage. Not controversial in a good or bad way. It's just hard to understand. Come with me from Lebanon. Come with me. Descend from the crest of Amana, at the top of Sinar, the summit of Hermon, from the lion's dens of mountain haunts. And people have all kinds of different things. Some even thinks it's kind of referring to even like mythology. Like it's saying like, I treat you like as if you were like a god, small g. And people say, no, that can't be what it is or whatever it is. But he explains what it means in the next thing he says. And he says it this way: you have stolen my heart, my sister, my bride. You've stolen my heart. You, with one glance of your eyes, with one jewel of your necklace, it's gone. You have it. You've taken it, and I give it to you freely. Now, he calls her my sister. This is not a wedding from Alabama or anything. This is, anyway, we already knew that because she had all the teeth. But too easy. I got good buddies from Alabama. They'll like this. The idea here is that he has given her his heart completely, and she has taken it. And now he calls her a sister. In other words, we are covenantally bonded together as a family. Hasn't ever called her that before. Now we're bonded together as family. You're as close to me legally as a sister. You're part of my family and my bride. She's the bride now. This is the first time we hear that. You're my bride. And he's saying, I am giving it to you. I'm giving you the rest of my heart. It was right around the time when we started Hope, so it might have been about 15 years ago, I came to a point in my marriage where I realized that I was holding things a little bit back. And it wasn't like events or anything like that. It was a simple little stupid thing that I was holding back. And it was simply this. I had thought about, what if Carol were to die, how would I be? And I thought, it would be hard, but I could make it. I don't want to put too much hope in her, and I don't want, And I realized that God was saying to me, I'm glad that you've resisted trying to worship her, but I think what you're ultimately doing is not giving you all of your heart. And I remember telling her like this. She couldn't even understand it. It's like, no, I think if you were to die, I am now willing to say I would be unable to function for a good period of time. And I was like, there was a part of me I didn't know I was not giving to you, but I'm giving it all to you. I'm pushing the chips all in here. Everything. I'm willing to be completely lost for a while if you were to pass away and I were to remain. You've stolen my heart, my sister, my bride. Third thing, he realizes that she's his dream girl. Look at what he says here. He says, your lips drop sweetness as the honeycomb, my bride. Milk and honey are under your tongue. That's a weird phrase, right? Milk and honey. It wouldn't be something that I would use in culture. Oh, baby, milk and honey under your tongue. It's like, really? I mean, it's best you got? But what does that imagery, milk and honey, remind you of in the Old Testament? Anybody? The promised land. It's a land, what? Dripping with milk and honey. Who is she? She's the promised land. You're the promised girl. You make me home. I'm home now. You are my dream girl. That dog is released. Another dog is deep desire at the same time with respect. He says, listen how he describes her. He says, you're like a garden. And not just any old garden. It has a spring in it. It has a fountain. There's this orchard of all these fruits and these beautiful smells. Everything is there. He says, you're a garden fountain, a well of flowing water streaming down from Lebanon. This idea of Lebanon where the cedars were. Cedar has a wonderful smell. It's just a beautiful imagery. And you're that garden. But what kind of garden is it? What does it say? It says, you are a garden, what? Locked up. In other words, it's been preserved. It hasn't been given to other people. It's locked up. But the other thing is, who has the key to that? And it's not him. It's her. She has the key. She can decide whether or not to let him in. I'm not just talking about sex. I am talking about that. But I'm talking about everything else as well. Letting him enter into her life in every area. Of course, sexual intercourse is part of it. It's a metaphor for everything else. And he says, you're a garden locked up. I remember when Carol and I took a class. I was a seminary student. One of the classes I took was an elective. I took this class on marriage counseling, how to do marriage counseling, all that kind of thing. And as part of it, we went through some of that. Your spouse had to attend. It was part of the deal if you were married, and they had to attend, and you had to go through some marriage counseling, which was great, you know. And you'd get into small groups, and you'd basically practice marriage counseling on each other, which is probably, you know, why I'm so messed up now. Some clown who got a C in the class. Great, I got counseling with a guy who got a C in the class. But I remember something the professor said in that class that I've never forgotten. He said, when you get in these small groups and you're going to talk, he said this, and I've never forgotten this phrase. He said, the amount of self-disclosure you want to do is up to you. You want to share a lot? That's fine. You want to do a little? That's fine. That phrase, self-disclosure. And we all have that. We all give a certain amount of self-disclosure. And who holds the key on that? I do. I do. Who holds the key to her? She does. He deeply desires her. And he just says how beautifully she is. But he says to her, you hold the key. You decide whether or not I get to come in and enjoy this garden. And how does she respond? The next dog off the leash is, and I love to call it this, we're done talking. This is the way I'm calling it. Look at how she responds. She says this, and the first word here should shock you. Because she says, awake. Now, if you've been following in Song of Solomon, that word is shocking. Because remember what the controlling theme, we'll see it 3 times. We saw it 2 already. We'll see it again in chapter 8, is this phrase. 3 times you'll see this controlling phrase. Daughters of Jerusalem, I adjure you, I charge you by the gazelles and by the does of the field, do not arouse or awaken love until it so desires. It says 3 times, it talks about this. And what's her first word? Wake up. Wake up. Don't hit the snooze button. Wake up. Ooh. Wake, north wind, and come, south wind. Blow on my garden. Does it mean her body? Absolutely. It's a metaphor for all of her being, though. Blow on all of it, and let its fragrance spread abroad. And then she opens the door. Let my lover come into his garden. And she names it his garden. This is now for you, all of me. and taste its choice fruits. And just like a very classy movie, just when it's just getting super steamy, I mean, this is steamy stuff, the lights fade. Do you understand that? This is one of the steamiest passages in Scripture, and the actual act of sex, sexual intercourse, is not even talked about. Gentlemen, ladies in the room, sex is so much more than the 90 seconds of sexual release. It is about this whole relationship. You want to have maximum sex? You have that kind of relationship where you're right with each other, you're right with God, and you are enjoying each other in the way God intended, that it's not good for man to be alone. I'll make a helper. And it's all areas of your life come together, illustrated by sexual union. But it's not just about sexual union. That's not real maximum sex. This is maximum sex. That's huge difference in what the world's teaching you. It's how much, how quick, how many can I conquest, right? And the Bible says, oh, dude, put that doggy dog back on a leash and let it run when it can really run. Not in some little backyard, in the 40-acre field that it's supposed to run in. So that leads us to the next passion that's unleashed. And like I said, the sexual act is already done. They're just sitting there smoking a cigarette, and this is what happens. He says, I've come into my garden, my sister, my bride. I've gathered my myrrh and my spice, and I've eaten my honeycomb and my honey, and I've drunk my wine and my milk. And he talks about now the joy of true sex without shame, without guilt, and without feeling more alone. This is like, we're in a covenant relationship, and this is the beginning of a lifetime like this? This is awesome. This is the way a golden retriever is supposed to run. That dog can hunt, huh? This is the way it's supposed to happen. Which leads us to the last thing, number 7. It's this passion that says, your redeemed passions now are encouraged. God wants you to have giddy up, biblical, passionate sex. He really does. But he wants it to be leashed until that time. And even when you are married, to put it back on the leash when you're in other environments. And here's what happens. Now, we don't know who says this. There's different commentaries say different things. Look at this is the end or beginning of chapter 5. It says, the second part of chapter 5, verse 1. It says, eat, O friends, and drink. Drink deeply. Drink your fill. Or some versions say, get drunk, O lovers. And some commentaries think this is where God speaks. God is saying, go for it. Keep it up. Now, it could be the friends that we've seen in other ones. That's a little creepy. I mean, that's it's like, you're knocking on the door, what, whatever. Either one of them. God is a little bit difficult to insert here as well. Like he isn't in the rest of the book, and I don't know. I kind of lean more towards the friends of the narrator. But anyway, you take it. This is what God thinks. It's in his word, and this is what he thinks. Whether or not this is him particularly speaking in the song or not, I don't know. But it's saying, go for it. This dog can be set free. Let it run. And it's a great thing. That's what passions look like. The way the wedding night, the way that sexuality is meant to go. And I'm going to open it up for questions here before I close, and we'll see how this goes. So, to which I have not a very good answer. It is a very difficult thing to think of Solomon having 1,000, I think 1,000, like it was either 400 wives and 600 concubines or flip them. That's a complicated thing to think of this particular thing in that context. So a lot of people believe, and I would lean this way, but I have no real way of proving it, that this was before he kind of went and, married half the kingdom, It's like, oh, she's fine. Why don't you come on in the palace here? He kind of went crazy. So I look at it and think that the way it sounds so exclusive. That's one explanation. Another explanation is Solomon's writing this as a song of the way things should be and not the way things ended up with his life. That's another possibility. But what is not a possibility, it doesn't make any sense in the book, is that he had the same relationship with all 1,000 women. That makes no sense, right? My lover's mine and I am his. My lover's mine and I am his. My lover's mine and I am his. My lover's mine and I'm his. That doesn't make any sense. So that can't be that. So it has to be one of those other ones, and I kind of lean towards the first one, but I don't really have any way of proving that. Again, it's a song, it's poetry, so that makes it real complicated. So we did talk about this in the very first sermon, a little bit about the difficulties with this as well. So that's a great question. Understand though that it is definitely talking about an exclusive relationship, whether or not he's in repentance in writing it or talking historically about his first wife. So good question. Anybody else? Well, great. Let me close with this then. Let me close by asking you simply this. And it kind of goes, talks about sexuality, but it talks about any area. Any area. Are you letting, if you're a follower of Jesus Christ, and you now have appetites and passions for things, are you having those passions, are they under godly, freeing self-control? Are you putting that dog on the leash at the proper time? Because like my dog, when we'd walk on the street, I live off Lake Street, it'd be real busy, and if you let Ripley, he'd see a dog or a squirrel across the street, with no regard whatsoever, he'd just run right across the street. And that dog would be dead, right? Are you saying, no, in this world, the passions, most of the time, have to be leashed. And there are a few places where it's like, hey, here's this passion, and then it can run. Are you taking that and saying, God, you need to give me strength. You need to give me power. You need, through the power of your gospel, to transform me so that I can now have self-control to keep this on the leash. Not because you're a killjoy, but because you want me to feel fully set free when it's in the right context. Let's pray together.